Super Sodam, otherwise known as Twisted with Hatred, or to those familiar in the NAPSO2 community, HTPD, is a particular quest that is perhaps considered to be one of the most difficult quests in PSO2. This quest will test not only your survival and class mastery, but it will also test your ability to dish out sufficient DPS in order to clear this quest. Knowing that, to those who are watching, it's pretty obvious that you have to go into this quest with a purpose to obtain more crass units and potential SSAs, a purpose to obtain more Divine Stones, otherwise known as Power Stone, whatever you call that shit, a purpose to participate and clear the quests that will leave you with an achievement should you clear it, a purpose that will motivate you to clear this quest, because
without purpose, we would not
clear. Now the basics. Super Sodam is an emergency/urgent quest that is random and it can spawn at any given time. The announcement occurs 15 minutes below the striking time of the hour, which is based on rolling EQ factors, which I will not go into detail. You can tell if the quest announcement is Super Sodam if it begins with the commencing announcement as shown here. If you use Japanese voice lines, the announcer will say Koreyori. If this shows up instead, it is just the regular 12-man Sodam. Super Sodam is extremely similar to 12-man Sodam with several notable differences. Firstly, you have to have your main class and subclass at level 100. If you use a successor class like Hero, Phantom, Etoile, or Luster, level 100 is the requirement. Otherwise, you will be ineligible to attend this quest. Secondly, there is a time limit. Unlike the 12-man Sodam where you have the whole hour to jerk off to, Super Sodam has a time limit of only 22 minutes and 22 seconds. Additionally, you're only allowed a maximum of 2 official deaths. Deaths count for when your body turns into a dark silhouette in a suspended animation where you're unable to do anything other than wait for someone to revive you, use escape doll for revival, or just simply leave. Obviously, leaving the quest is not a good idea. Thirdly, there is an additional phase that occurs right before the last final phase, which is the light and dark phase, otherwise known as elementless, rainbow, or whatever common or modern jargon that you want to call it. Fourthly, in the last phase of Super Sodam, the hand animations come out much quickly than 12-man version. The 12-man slam down animation goes like this. And the Super Sodam slam down animation goes like this. That should cover the most notable amongst the differences between the 12-man and Super Sodam. Obviously, I can go into far more detail and point out more differences, but that will be for another time. The main thing I will focus on this particular guide is for newer players or veteran players who have difficulty clearing or engaging Super Sodam. To begin, let's talk about what kind of classes that I personally would recommend. Before I list the classes that I personally would recommend, I'm going to make a quick disclaimer that my recommendations are not the end-all be-all. I'll be listing the classes based on an average population and not the outlier of the tryhard population, and I'll be prioritizing overall survivability, damage output, and ease of use in general. Obviously, the first class I will recommend is Braver with Sub-Etoile. Braver Etoile not only boasts really good DPS, they also have good survivability because they have Etoile Sub. You can literally spam Penetrating Arrow and achieve this. Second class I would recommend is Luster. Aside from the fact that Luster is one of the best all-rounder class, they also have this thing called Luster Will, where you not only do you have a safety net while dishing out a lot of damage, You can also reset your luster will for an extra life after achieving 500 vaults, which is not that difficult to do. Luster also has the capability of applying Gelon, which, provided that you have the right affixes on your weapons, you'll be getting an additional 5% damage, which is pretty neat. Third class that I'll recommend is Hero. You can get an extra life that is refreshable with Hero Refresh, albeit with a long cooldown, and you can comfortably do insane damage by simply slapping the PP counter S5 and BNS counter with TMG to infinity. However, be advised that Hero does not get the most damage just by using TMG only. So there are some things that you have to learn with Hero, like swapping different weapons and deal with gear staling in order to maximize DPS output. However, that is not a concern for this video, since we are not aiming for hyper optimization, but instead with classes that will allow new players to use to clear Super Sodam. If you are in a party that consists of those three classes, to which they also have decent gear, and they all have practiced a good amount with 12-man Sodoms, you could be somewhat confident about the probability of clearing Super Sodam. Of course, you can make do with other classes I have mentioned above, such as Ranger Étoile, which is a class that provides one of the best supports in the game. With Weak Bullet, they are able to provide additional DPS on the marked spot with Weak Bullet, and everyone can just Hail Mary that part for extra DPS. The person who uses Ranger Étoile should be praised for the support. Tekker is also another class that most would use just to tech a buff in the camp ship and then swap back to the main so that the three members of their party can get the added benefits of extra HP and attack to make Super Sodam easier in terms of DPS, considering the time limit. Classes like Gunner, Fighter, Phantom, Bouncer, although they have good DPS, their survivability can be quite difficult since they can get clubbed to death with a mole stick. They require a fair amount of focus, sheer will, and above all, skill. So utilizing those classes can be difficult, but they are oftentimes rewarding. If you wish to do it with those classes, you could do it at your own risk. Classes like Hunter, Force, and Summoner are classes that are not used as often as they require some good knowledge on how each of those classes play, and their DPS can be questionable if you do not know what you're doing. I will personally stay away from those classes unless you made them yourself. Last thing we will talk about is the Light and Dark phase. This phase is where the majority of you will die. Death is an inevitability until you conquer it. We will talk about what you can expect about the Light and Dark phase in order to maximize your probability of survival and clearance. Sodam will sometimes walk up slowly and emit a pool of his junk. This pool is counterable, but generally you wouldn't want to go for it since it can take your PP away and also pull you down. Usually after Sodam walks up slowly by leaving his poop, he invokes this merry-go-round spinning lasers along with 2 tracker bullets. These are all counterable. Be aware that the line that is aimed at you can be avoided by either just walking around or by dodging. You can counter these tracker bullets by becoming familiar with the pulsation, which gives you the indication of when the bullet will strike you. Remember, these always comes in pairs, so don't forget that the second bullet, which comes soon after. Additionally, the merry-go-round does not hit you if you are extremely close to Sodam, so if you are up close melee class, you can take advantage of this. Sodam also does this move where he raises one of his hands like he is some stupid royalty. If you're very close to him, you will not see 2 white blades striking your last known position, but if you are mid-range, you will see this. Another move that Sodam does is the forward scream blast, which is similar to the one in lightning phase, as you can see here. Sodam also does the slam that forms a lingering X-ray from the point of impact. You can dodge it, but you are also absolutely safe from it if you are very close in front of it. This particular move pulls you and then detonates when the hand closes. Sodom will also be a bitch and camp in the back with two particular moves, one of which lights up the center map in a line and strikes with its flaccid axe. Do know that you can either do a move that protects you with guard or iframes, dodge by timing it properly, or simply run and position yourself to the edges where the floor hasn't lit up. The other move that this bitch does when it camps in the back is it stays in the air and shoots a multitude of bullets like hail in Egypt. You can avoid this by moving in one direction constantly, or if you're lucky, run all the way to the front and not worry about getting hit. Remember, just because you run all the way to the front does not mean you are 100% safe from the bullets. They can track you if you got picked up from the Sodom's aim reticle. Sodom sometimes will do a reach over grab or teleport axe strike similar to phase 2 if the person who has aggro is in mid-range distance. Last but not least, Sodom will do the big attack where it shoots 50 million bullets followed by a white erection from the ground. You can simply walk in one direction to avoid all the bullets or counter them when you have the timing. But for the last white erection, be mindful of your positioning since it can juggle you to death. You can of course counter the last part of the white erection as well. But do note that it has a lingering hitbox and sometimes you can get hit even after countering it. Well, there you have it. I think I covered the majority of the things in the light and dark phase, and I believe this should be enough for you to have a fundamental grasp of what Super Sodom is, most specifically light and dark phase. Don't forget that practice makes permanence. If you practice like shit, you will make shit permanent. So always try to have good habits with practice. Check out other people's YouTube videos on how they cleared Super Sodom with their respective classes, because if they can do it, you sure can as well. Don't forget to always have fun with this game and enjoy as much as you can. FTN.